Have you ever ignored a Scorpio and thought it wouldn't matter? Well, that's a mistake many people make, thinking silence goes unnoticed. But here's a warning. Ignoring a Scorpio isn't just leaving them on read. It's pressing a button that triggers deep, intense, and sometimes completely unexpected reactions. Scorpio is not just any sign. It's known for its emotional intensity, sharp perception, and, most importantly, for not easily forgetting what it feels. When you ignore a Scorpio, it may seem like nothing is happening on the surface, but inside, a real storm begins to form. At first, they may observe, in silence, trying to understand the reason. Scorpios are natural investigators. They analyze every detail, every change in behavior. And the more you ignore them, the deeper they dive, trying to uncover what's behind it. But don't be mistaken, this silence is not weakness. It's strategy. Over time, what was curiosity can turn into something more intense. Scorpio feels everything deeply, including rejection. And when that happens, they don't just move on as if nothing happened. They process, internalize, and often completely change the way they see you. And that's when things start to get really interesting. Because ignoring a Scorpio can trigger reactions ranging from a cold, calculated distance to such a deep emotional transformation that you may never recognize that person the same way again. You might think you're in control of the situation, but in reality, you may be starting a chain of events completely beyond your control. In this video, you'll discover the 5 things that really happen when you ignore a Scorpio. And trust me, the 5th one will completely change how you see this sign. So stay until the end, because this might save you from a mistake many people only realize when it's already too late. Do you think ignoring a Scorpio always leads to the same reaction? No, and that's exactly where the danger lies. Because there are Scorpios who go silent, but are observing every detail. And there are those who, in that same silence, are already saying goodbye to you internally. What looks the same on the outside is completely different on the inside. Today, you'll discover 5 things that really happen when you ignore a Scorpio. And the last one is the most unexpected of all, because it completely changes the game. If you've ever ignored someone thinking you were in control, or felt a Scorpio pulling away without understanding why, this video will open your eyes. Stay until the end, because some reactions have no return. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps this content reach those who need to hear it. Silent analysis versus emotional silence. When you ignore a Scorpio, the first thing that disappears is not the interest, it's the visible reaction. And that's exactly where everything begins. There is a type of Scorpio that enters a nearly surgical silence. They don't freak out, don't demand, don't show weakness. On the contrary, they observe. It's as if they dive into the deepest waters of their own mind, where every detail about you is analyzed with precision. The message you didn't reply to, the time you took, the shift in tone, the different energy, nothing goes unnoticed. This silence is not empty, it's intelligence in motion. They begin to assemble an invisible puzzle, connecting dots you didn't even realize you left behind. And the more you ignore them, the deeper they go. Not to chase, but to understand. Because for this type of Scorpio, losing emotional control is not an option. They need to know why. They need to decode. But there is another type, and this one is completely different. This one doesn't analyze first, they feel first. When ignored, it's as if an emotional wave crosses their chest without warning. It's not rational, it's not strategic, it's intense. They withdraw, close themselves off, like a shell protecting a wounded pearl. On the outside, silence. Inside a storm. They relive moments, recall connections, feel the weight of absence as something physical. And even without saying a word, there is pain there. This silence is not calculation, it's protection. Because when a Scorpio feels ignored, they don't interpret it only as absence. They may interpret it as rejection. And for someone who feels everything deeply, that's not something light. What's most curious is that, From the outside, both look the same. Both go silent. Both distance themselves. Both stop reacting. But inside, they are completely different universes. One is cold, calculating, trying to understand the game. The other is immersed in emotion, trying to deal with what they feel. And here is the most important point. You never know which one is in front of you, because a Scorpio doesn't easily reveal what's happening inside them. Their silence is dense, mysterious, almost indecipherable. And that's exactly why ignoring this sign is so risky. Because while you think nothing is happening, something deep has already begun to transform. Strategic distance versus definitive distance. When a Scorpio pulls away after being ignored, it doesn't necessarily mean they're gone. And understanding this difference can completely change how you see what's happening. There is a type of Scorpio who creates distance, but remains energetically present. They step back as if taking a few steps away in the middle of a silent game. It's not giving up, it's observation on another level. This distance is almost tactical. They reduce contact, lower their presence, stop showing up, but remain attentive. It's like a diver who disappears from the surface, but is still down there, seeing everything clearly. This type wants to feel the impact of their own absence. They want to see if you notice, if you react, if you reach out. It's not just about you, it's about emotional control. They need to understand whether the bond still exists, or if they were the only one who felt everything more deeply. But there is another type of Scorpio, and this one doesn't distance themselves. They end things. The distance here is not strategy. It's a decision. It's like a door that slowly closes, and when it closes, there is no sound. But there is also no return. This Scorpio doesn't test, doesn't observe from afar, doesn't wait for a reaction. They simply cut it off. Contact decreases, presence disappears, and along with that, the bond begins to dissolve. And the most intense part, they usually don't announce this ending. There's no long explanation, no dramatic goodbye, just a definitive silence that, over time, turns into real absence. The contrast between these two types is almost invisible at first. Both pull away. Both become quieter. Both seem distant. But the intention behind it changes everything. One is still connected, even in silence. The other has already disconnected completely, without saying a word. And here is the most delicate point. Many people confuse strategic distance with definitive distance. They think there is still space, when in reality, there is nothing left. Because when a Scorpio truly decides to leave, they don't leave doors half open. They close them, lock them, and move on without looking back. And the most impactful part of all this is that, many times, you only realize which type it was when it's already too late. Internal intensification versus external coldness. When you ignore a Scorpio, something inside them doesn't simply disappear. In fact, it can grow. There is a type of Scorpio who reacts to silence with even more intensity. It's like fire fed by the wind. The more you pull away, the stronger it becomes inside them. They begin to feel everything on a deeper level. Thoughts repeat, emotions expand, and what was once light becomes dense. It's not just longing or curiosity. It's an almost magnetic need to understand, to feel, to decode what has changed. This Scorpio dives deep. They revisit conversations, recall moments, try to find hidden meanings between the lines. And the more answers are missing, the deeper they go. It's a silent intensity, but extremely alive. Like a storm happening at the bottom of the ocean, invisible on the surface, but powerful enough to change everything. But there is the other extreme. The Scorpio who, faced with the same silence, becomes cold. Suddenly, what was warmth turns into ice. The intense presence gives way to a distance that feels almost cold, almost indifferent. But this coldness doesn't come out of nowhere. It is built. It's as if they take all the intensity they feel and freeze it. Not because they stopped feeling, but because they decided not to show it anymore. This type understands that showing emotion can mean too much vulnerability. So they build a barrier. Replies become short. Interest seems to disappear. The energy completely changes. And from the outside, people think they don't feel anything anymore. But that's not always true. Many times, the feeling is still there. It just no longer has permission to appear. And that's where the contrast becomes almost invisible and dangerous. Because externally, both may seem distant. But internally, they are complete opposites. One is burning inside, feeling everything with increasing intensity. The other is frozen, controlling every reaction, every expression, every signal. One overflows internally. The other contains everything as much as possible. And here is the most delicate point of all. You never know which version is in front of you. Because a Scorpio doesn't easily reveal what they feel. They protect, hide, transform. And while you think the silence has cooled everything, it may actually be feeding something much deeper. Whether it's a flame that grows, or ice that hardens. And in both cases, nothing there is superficial. Transformation into power versus transformation into cutting OFF. Scorpio doesn't just feel emotions, they transform them. And when they are ignored, what happens inside them is not a simple reaction, it's alchemy. There is a type of Scorpio who takes the pain of silence, absence, and doubt, and turns it into power. It's as if they go through an internal fire, and instead of being consumed, they rebuild themselves from their own ashes. At first, it hurts. The absence weighs. The emptiness echoes. But little by little, something changes. They begin to reorganize internally. Pain becomes fuel. Rejection becomes drive. This Scorpio grows. They become emotionally stronger, more aware, more selective, more profound. What could have destroyed them ends up elevating them. It's the energy of the phoenix. Fall, burn, and rise stronger. But there is another type. And this one doesn't transform pain into growth. They transform it into a cut. Here, the process is quieter and more definitive. They feel. They notice. They understand. And then, they decide. There is no reconstruction aimed at the bond. No attempt to reframe what happened. There is elimination. It's as if they take that connection, analyze everything it represented, and simply remove it from their life. No noise. No confrontation. No second chance. This Scorpio doesn't want to grow together. They want to protect themselves alone. And for that, they cut. They cut access, cut energy, cut presence. And when this cut happens, it is deep. It's not a temporary distance. It's an energetic rupture. The contrast between these two processes is powerful. One transforms pain into evolution. The other transforms pain into closure. One still finds value in the experience. The other decides that the experience no longer deserves space. And here is the most intense point of all. Both are evolving, just in different directions. Because growth, for Scorpio, doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes, it means letting something die. And when you ignore this sign, you activate exactly this process. You're not just creating distance. You're triggering a transformation. And that transformation can create someone stronger, more aware, more present. Or it can create a cut so clean, so silent, that you don't even realize the exact moment you stop being part of their life. The unexpected effect, surprise. And here is the point that almost no one notices. The most unexpected effect of all when you ignore Scorpio. Because everything you've seen so far can lead to two completely opposite paths, and both are extreme. There is a type of Scorpio who comes back, but not in the way you imagine. They don't come back needy, confused, or the same as before. They return different, more aware, more intense, but at the same time more controlled. Like someone who has gone through a deep internal process and now sees everything clearly. It's like the sea after a storm, still deep, still powerful, but now with a quieter strength. This Scorpio comes back because they understood. They understood what they felt, what you represent, and, most importantly, their own value. But this return is not innocent. They observe more. They give less of themselves. And they hardly allow themselves to be affected in the same way again. In other words, They may return, but they will never be the same. But there is another path, and this is the most surprising one. The Scorpio who simply disappears. No warning, no goodbye, no explanation. It's as if they erased their presence from your life, not only physically, but emotionally. And the most impactful part is not the disappearance itself. It's the absence of any trace. There are no hints, no attempts to reconnect, no signals. It's as if everything was closed at such a deep level that there is nothing left to revisit. This Scorpio doesn't look back. And when they reach this point, it's not out of impulse. It's a decision. They have already felt, analyzed, transformed. And now, they simply see no reason to maintain any connection. The contrast here is the most extreme of all. One returns stronger, more aware, more selective. The other disappears in a definitive, irreversible way. And the most curious part? Both were born from the same starting point, the silence you created. That's what makes everything so unexpected. Because from your perspective, ignoring may seem small, temporary, even unimportant. But for a Scorpio, it can be the beginning of a deep decision. A decision that defines whether you are still part of their story, or if you become just something left in the past. And here is the truth that almost no one tells you. When you ignore a Scorpio, you are not testing their interest. You are actually activating an internal process that can end in two ways. Either they come back transformed, or they leave as if they had never existed. And when it reaches that point, it's no longer about your choice. It's about what they decided to feel, understand, and end. In the end, there is no simple reaction when it comes to Scorpio. There is depth. There is transformation. There is intensity, even in silence. Ignoring a Scorpio is not a neutral act. It's a trigger, and each one will react according to their own inner world. And now tell me, have you ever ignored a Scorpio or been ignored by one? What happened next? And now I want to truly thank you for staying until the end. If this message made sense to you, if at any moment you recognized yourself or thought of someone, then it has already fulfilled its purpose. And I want to ask you something simple, but very important. Comment below the number 0707. It will be like a sign, a confirmation that this message reached you. And if you want to keep receiving content like this, deep, intense, and that truly makes you see beyond the obvious, then join us. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, leave your like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Because sometimes a single message can completely change the way someone sees everything.